Arab millionaire found his black granddaughter living on the street. Where is her $3 million trust fund? Hassan al-Farsi dropped the photo folder onto the mahogany desk as if it burned his hands. At 72 years old, he had built a real estate empire worth $2 billion. He had faced financial crises, partner betrayals, his wife's death. Nothing had prepared him for what he had just seen. The photographs showed a 19-year-old black young woman sleeping on a thin mattress on the floor of a homeless shelter. In another image, she was washing dishes in an industrial kitchen, her arms covered in soap suds. In the last photo, she sat alone on a park bench, wearing clearly donated clothes, her gaze lost in the void. "Are you absolutely certain?" Hassan asked the private detective sitting across from him. Devon Carter nodded gravely. "I confirmed 3 times, Mr. Al-Farsi. This is Imani Johnson, your granddaughter." Hassan felt the air leave his lungs. Imani, Daniel's daughter. The girl to whom he had sent $15,000 every month for the past 19 years. $3 million deposited religiously into an account that should have ensured she never wanted for anything. And now she was sleeping in a shelter. "This is impossible," Hassan murmured. "Patricia sends me reports every month. Photos of Imani at school, report cards, expense receipts. She should be graduating from university this year." Devon opened another folder. "The reports are fake, sir. The photos were taken from other people's social media. The report cards are forged documents. Your granddaughter never attended a university. In fact, she barely finished high school at a public school on the south side of Atlanta." Hassan closed his eyes, trying to process the magnitude of the betrayal. Patricia Whitmore, Daniel's second wife. The woman who had promised to care for Imani as her own daughter after Daniel and Grace died in that car accident 17 years ago. Imani was only 2 years old when she lost her parents. Hassan was too devastated to raise such a small child alone. His own son, his Daniel, dead at 30 years old along with his wife. The pain was unbearable. Patricia appeared like salvation. She had been Imani's stepmother for only 8 months when the accident happened, but she swore she loved the girl as if she were her own. She promised to give her a wonderful life. Hassan, drowning in grief and with businesses on 3 different continents, accepted the arrangement. He established a generous trust fund. $15,000 per month to cover all of Imani's needs. Education, healthcare, clothes, extracurricular activities. Everything a child could want. And Patricia kept him away. Visits would confuse the girl, she would say. "She needs stability. You can see photos and videos. When she's older, we can arrange meetings." Hassan believed her. For 17 years, he believed her. "Where is Patricia now?" Hassan asked, his voice dangerously low. "In a $4 million mansion in Buckhead. 2 Mercedes in the garage. Her biological children in elite private schools. Annual vacations to Europe." Rage rose through Hassan's chest like lava. "And Imani?" "She was kicked out of the house the day she turned 18. Patricia said she had done her part and that Imani needed to learn to fend for herself. She didn't give her documents, money, nothing. Imani spent 3 months sleeping on the streets before finding Hope House shelter." Hassan stood so abruptly that his chair fell backward. "Take me to her. Now." The car ride to the south side of Atlanta took 40 minutes. Hassan watched the neighborhoods change outside his Mercedes window. The gleaming downtown skyscrapers gave way to more modest streets, then to areas clearly marked by poverty. Hope House Shelter operated in a renovated Old Baptist church. The white paint was peeling on the walls, and the parking lot had more potholes than asphalt. Hassan had donated to places like this throughout his life. He had never set foot in one. The director, a 60-year-old black woman named Mrs. Thompson, received them with a cautious expression. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for Imani Johnson. I'm her grandfather." Mrs. Thompson studied Hassan for a long moment. She clearly knew who he was. Everyone in Atlanta knew Hassan al-Farsi. "Imani is on kitchen duty. She works here in exchange for a place to sleep." Hassan felt his heart break a little more. The kitchen was large and institutional. Several women prepared dinner in enormous pots. And there, with her back to the door, a young woman scrubbed dishes in an industrial sink. She was tall and slender, with natural hair pulled back in a simple bun. She wore faded jeans and a t-shirt that had seen better days. Even so, there was something about her. The way she held her shoulders, the grace of her movements. Something that reminded him of Daniel in a way that made Hassan's eyes burn. "Imani," Mrs. Thompson called gently. The young woman turned, drying her hands on a cloth. When her eyes met Hassan's, there was no recognition. Only the caution of someone who had learned not to trust strangers. "Yes, ma'am." Hassan took a step forward, words catching in his throat. "Do you know who I am?" Imani slowly shook her head, looking at the man in the expensive suit who seemed completely out of place in that kitchen. "No, sir." "Should I?" The question hit Hassan like a punch to the stomach. "I am Hassan Al-Farsi. I am your grandfather. Your mother was my daughter. Thandi." Imani took a step back, her expression shifting from confusion to something harder. "Is this some kind of joke? My grandfather wants nothing to do with me. Patricia said he blames me for my father's death." If you're enjoying this story, subscribe to the channel now. Because what Hassan is about to discover about what Patricia did with the $3 million will reveal a betrayal that surpasses anything you could imagine. Imani's words echoed in the shelter kitchen like a sentence. Hassan felt his legs weaken. He had to lean against the doorframe to keep from falling. "I never said that," he managed to say. "Never. I loved your father more than my own life. And you are all that's left of him." Imani crossed her arms, distrust evident in every line of her body. "Patricia told me you sent a letter when my father died. She said I was the reason he was driving that night. That if I didn't exist, he would still be alive." Hassan felt nausea rise in his throat. "That's a lie. A cruel and calculated lie. I never wrote any letter. I sent money every month for 17 years to make sure you had everything. $15,000. Every month. Without fail." Imani laughed, but there was no humor in that sound. $15,000 a month? "Sir, I grew up eating instant noodles. I wore thrift store clothes my whole life. I never had my own bedroom. I slept on a mattress in the basement while her children had suites on the second floor." Mrs. Thompson placed a hand on Imani's shoulder. "Perhaps you should talk somewhere more private." They went to the director's small office. Imani sat in a plastic chair, keeping maximum distance from Hassan. Devon stood near the door, observing. Hassan took his phone from his pocket and opened the banking app. He showed the screen to Imani. "Look at this. Every transfer. Every month. For 17 years. Imani looked at the numbers on the screen. Her expression changed from disbelief to confusion, then to something that looked like horror. This is more than $3 million. $3,060,000, to be exact," Hassan confirmed. "Money that should have guaranteed your education, your health, your future." Patricia was the fund administrator. She had legal access to use the money in your name. Imani was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was a whisper. "She bought that house 5 years ago. $4 million. The neighbors commented on how lucky she was in life. A young widow who managed to rebuild herself." Her hands began to tremble. "I thought she worked hard. That the money came from her work." "She doesn't work," Devon interrupted gently. "We checked. Patricia Whitmore has had no registered employment for 15 years. All her income comes from a single source. The trust fund established by your grandfather." Tears began streaming down Imani's face before she could stop them. "She told me I was a burden. That she was doing me a favor by raising me. That I should be grateful to have a roof over my head." Her voice broke. "On my 18th birthday, she woke me up at 6 in the morning and said I had 1 hour to pack. She said she had fulfilled her legal obligation and that I needed to learn to survive on my own." Hassan felt rage growing inside him like a wave. "Did she give you anything? Documents? Money?" "Nothing. Not even my birth certificate. I got a copy at the registry office 2 months later, when I finally saved enough money working at a restaurant." Hassan stood and walked to the window. He needed a moment to compose himself. When he turned again, his expression had changed. The sadness was still there, but now there was something else. Cold determination. "Imani, I failed you. I should have come in person. I should have demanded visits. I should have questioned Patricia's reports instead of simply believing them. He approached and for the first time, knelt in front of his granddaughter. I can't change the last 17 years. But I can make a promise. I will recover every penny that was stolen from you. And Patricia will pay for every day of suffering she caused. Imani looked at her grandfather kneeling before her. The richest man she had ever seen in her life, on his knees on the dirty floor of a shelter office. Why should I trust you? You left me with her. You never came to see me. 17 years and not even a phone call. Because Patricia said you didn't want contact. That I scared you. That you had nightmares about me. Hassan felt shame burning in his chest. I believed her because it was easier. Because looking at you would mean facing the pain of losing Daniel. And I was too much of a coward for that. Silence stretched between them. I don't know if I can forgive you, Imani finally said. You don't have to. Not now. Maybe never. But let me at least fix what can be fixed. In the following weeks, Hassan mobilized an army of lawyers and forensic accountants. The investigation revealed the full extent of Patricia's fraud. The $4 million house in Buckhead, purchased entirely with money from Imani's fund. 2 Mercedes, one for her and one for her oldest son. $40,000 annual tuitions at private schools for her 2 biological children. Annual trips to Paris, London, Dubai. Jewelry, designer clothes, spa treatments. While Imani ate leftovers and wore donated clothes, Patricia lived like a queen with the money of the stepdaughter she kept in a basement. The investigators also discovered something that made Hassan want to break things. Patricia had hired a company to create fake reports for 17 years. Photos stolen from social media of other black girls, edited to look like Imani. Forged school report cards from institutions Imani never attended. Medical receipts for appointments that never happened. It was a meticulously planned fraud operation. Imani moved to an apartment that Hassan rented for her. She didn't want to go to his penthouse. She wasn't ready for that yet. But she accepted help. She accepted new clothes, real food, a comfortable bed. Gradually, she began telling stories from the past. How Patricia forced her to clean the entire house every day while the biological children did nothing. How she was forbidden to eat at the table with the family, having to wait until everyone finished. How she never received a birthday or Christmas gift, while the other 2 children were showered with expensive presents. Each story was a knife in Hassan's heart. But it was also fuel for what would come next. Hassan's lawyer, Thomas Park, finalized the documents on a Friday afternoon. We have enough evidence to destroy her, Thomas said. Fraud, embezzlement, document forgery, child abuse. She'll get at least 15 years. Hassan looked at the piles of papers on the table. Schedule a meeting with her. Tell her it's to discuss the continuation of the fund now that Imani is of age. Thomas frowned. You want to confront her personally? I want to look into her eyes when the world she built on my granddaughter's misery crumbles. Patricia Whitmore arrived at Thomas Park's law office wearing Chanel and carrying a Hermes bag that cost more than many people earned in a year. She smiled when she saw Hassan sitting in the meeting room, the fake smile of someone who had spent 17 years practicing the art of lying. Hassan, what a pleasant surprise. Thomas said we needed to discuss Imani's fund now that she's turned 19. Hassan didn't stand. Didn't offer his hand. Just watched her with eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. Sit down, Patricia. Something in his voice made her smile falter. But she sat, crossing her legs elegantly, still maintaining the facade. I imagine you want to make adjustments to the fund. Imani is at a difficult age, you know how it is. Young people need guidance so they don't waste money. Where is Imani, Patricia? The question was as direct as a bullet. Patricia blinked. What do you mean? She's in her apartment, I imagine. I gave her independence when she turned 18, as we agreed. You gave her independence. Hassan repeated the words slowly. Is that what you call throwing a girl out of the house without documents, without money, without anywhere to go? Patricia's face hardened. She was 18. She was legally an adult. My obligation as guardian ended. Hassan placed a folder on the table and slid it toward Patricia. Open it. Patricia hesitated, then opened the folder. Inside were photographs. Imani sleeping on a mattress on the floor of a shelter. Imani washing dishes in an industrial kitchen. Imani sitting alone on a park bench in donated clothes. "What is this?" Patricia asked, but her voice had lost its confidence. "This is where my granddaughter spent the last year. In a homeless shelter on the south side of Atlanta, while you live in a $4 million mansion." Patricia quickly closed the folder. "I have no control over the choices she makes. If she preferred to live like this instead of working." "Working?" Hassan leaned forward. "You stole $3 million from her, Patricia. Every penny I sent for 17 years. You used it to buy your house, your cars, your children's education. And you left my granddaughter eating leftovers and sleeping in a basement. This is ridiculous. I used the money to raise her. Children are expensive." Thomas Park opened a second folder. "We have complete bank records, Mrs. Whitmore. Every transfer, every purchase. The mansion in Buckhead was paid entirely with funds from Imani's account. The 2 Mercedes as well. The $40,000 annual tuitions at private schools for your biological children. The annual trips to Europe." Patricia turned pale. "We also have the fake reports," Thomas continued. "The company you hired to create forged school report cards and edit photos of other people to look like Imani. 17 years of documented fraud." Patricia stood abruptly. "I'm not going to sit here listening to these accusations. If you want to sue me, talk to my lawyer." "Sit down." Hassan's voice was so sharp that Patricia obeyed by instinct. "You haven't seen the worst yet." The meeting room door opened. Imani entered. She was no longer wearing thrift store clothes. She wore a simple but elegant outfit that Hassan had bought for her. Her hair was down, falling over her shoulders. She walked to the table and stopped directly in front of Patricia, the stepmother who had treated her like garbage for 17 years. "Hi, Patricia." Patricia opened her mouth, but no sound came out. "You told me my grandfather hated me," Imani continued, her voice steady despite her hands trembling slightly. "You said he blamed me for my father's death. You said I was a burden nobody wanted." "Imani dear, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly now. You isolated me so I would never discover the truth. You kept me ignorant so you could steal my future. And when you didn't need me anymore, you threw me away like garbage." Patricia tried one last card. "I raised you for 17 years. I gave you food, shelter, clothing. You should be grateful." Imani laughed, a bitter sound that echoed in the room. "Grateful? You made me sleep in a damp basement while your children had sweets. You fed me leftovers while they ate at expensive restaurants. You dressed me in thrift store clothes while you wore Chanel. You stole my childhood, my education, my family. And you think I should be grateful?" Patricia looked around, searching for an exit. She found none. Hassan stood. "Here's what's going to happen, Patricia. You have 2 options. The first is to return every penny you stole, sell the house, the cars, everything you bought with Imani's money, and accept a reduced sentence of 10 years. The second is to go to trial, where we will present 17 years of documented evidence of fraud, embezzlement, forgery, and abuse. In that case, you'll get 20 years or more." Patricia was silent for a long moment. "You can't prove abuse. It's her word against mine." Thomas smiled coldly. "Actually, we have more than her word. We found neighbors who saw Imani cleaning the yard in the middle of winter while your children were inside the heated house. We found the maid you fired because she asked questions about the girl in the basement. And we found medical records showing that Imani never went to a dentist or doctor for 17 years, despite you reporting regular medical expenses." The color completely drained from Patricia's face. "I want to talk to my lawyer." "Talk," Hassan said. "But meanwhile, police are already at your house with a search warrant. Your children have been notified. Your accounts have been frozen. The world you built on my granddaughter's suffering just crumbled." As if responding to a signal, 2 police officers entered the room. "Patricia Whitmore, you are under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, document forgery, and aggravated child neglect." As they put handcuffs on Patricia, she looked at Imani with pure hatred. You should have stayed on the street where you belong. Imani didn't back down. No. I belong with my family. And you were never my family. When Patricia was taken away, Imani finally allowed the tears to fall. Hassan embraced her, feeling her body tremble against his. It's over, he whispered. She will never hurt you again. Imani pulled away enough to look into her grandfather's eyes. Thank you. For not giving up when you found me. For believing in me even when I didn't believe in you. You are my granddaughter. You are all I have. It took me 17 years to find you, but now that I have, I will never let you go again. Patricia Whitmore's trial lasted 3 weeks. The evidence was overwhelming. Bank records showing every diverted transfer. Testimonies from neighbors who witnessed the treatment given to Imani. The maid who was fired for asking questions. Forensic experts who analyzed the falsified reports over 17 years. Patricia tried to defend herself by claiming she was entitled to the money as guardian. The jury didn't believe her. Guilty on all charges. The judge sentenced her to 18 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole for the first 12. He ordered full restitution of $3,060,000, plus interest and moral damages. The mansion in Buckhead was seized and sold. The cars too. Every luxury item purchased with Imani's suffering was liquidated. Patricia's biological children, 2 teenagers of 16 and 17, were sent to live with their maternal grandmother. They were innocent in all this, victims of their own mother's choices. Hassan ensured they had financial support to finish their studies. Imani agreed. She knew what it was like to be punished for someone else's mistakes. 6 months passed. Imani was sitting on the balcony of the apartment that was now truly hers, not just rented. Hassan had transferred the property to her name, along with a new trust fund properly protected with independent oversight. She held an acceptance letter from Emory University. Social work program, with a full scholarship based on merit and her story of overcoming adversity. Hassan appeared at the door with 2 cups of tea. That's the 3rd time you've read that letter today, he said, sitting beside her. It still doesn't feel real. Imani carefully folded the paper. A year ago I was sleeping on a park bench. Now I'm going to university. You deserve this. You deserve much more than this. They sat in silence for a moment, watching the sunset paint Atlanta's horizon in shades of orange and pink. I visited my parents' grave yesterday, Imani said softly. First time I managed to go alone. Hassan felt his heart tighten. How was it? Hard. But necessary. She looked at her grandfather. I brought flowers. I told them about you. About how you found me. About how we're trying to build something together. Hassan felt his eyes burn. What did you tell them? I told them that their father, that you didn't give up. That even after 17 years, even after so many lies, you kept searching for the truth. Imani held his hand. I told them I'm learning to forgive. Not Patricia, she doesn't deserve forgiveness. But you. For me. Because carrying anger is too heavy. Hassan squeezed his granddaughter's hand. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Maybe not. But I deserve the peace that comes with it. A year later, Imani founded a non-profit organization. It was called the Grace Foundation, in honor of the mother she never knew. The goal was to help young people aging out of foster care or abandoned by abusive families. It offered temporary housing, legal assistance, support for education, and job training. Hassan donated the initial capital, $5 million. But Imani insisted on raising additional funds on her own. She wanted the foundation to be sustainable, not dependent on a single benefactor. Mrs. Thompson, the Hope House director who had sheltered Imani in her darkest moment, became the foundation's first employee. Together, they transformed pain into purpose. In its first year, the Grace Foundation helped 47 young people find stable housing. 32 found jobs. 18 entered university or technical programs. Imani visited Hope House every weekend, talking with residents, sharing her story, offering hope. I know what you're feeling, she would say. I know what it's like to think no one cares. But someone always cares. Sometimes that person just hasn't found you yet. On a December evening, Hassan and Imani sat together in his office, looking at Atlanta's lights through the panoramic window. Your father would be proud, Hassan said. Daniel always wanted to make a difference in the world. He would have loved seeing who you've become. Imani smiled, touching the necklace she wore around her neck. Inside the small locket was a photo of Daniel and Grace on their wedding day. Hassan had kept the image for 19 years, waiting for the right moment to give it to her. I wish I had known them, Imani said. You know them. Through the stories I tell. Through the photos and videos. And through yourself. Hassan touched his granddaughter's face. You have your mother's kindness and your father's determination. The best of both. And my grandfather's stubbornness? Hassan laughed, a sound he hadn't made often before finding Imani. That too. Imani looked out the window, thinking about everything that had happened. A year and a half ago, she was washing dishes in a shelter, convinced she was invisible to the world. Convinced her own grandfather hated her. Convinced she deserved nothing but scraps and crumbs. Now she had a family. An education. A purpose. And most importantly, she had the truth. The money was never what really mattered. $3 million couldn't buy back the 17 lost years. Couldn't erase the cold nights in the basement, or the constant hunger, or the devastating loneliness. But being found, being seen, being loved for who you really are, that was priceless. Imani stood and hugged her grandfather. Thank you, she whispered. For finding me. For choosing me. For staying. Hassan hugged her back, feeling for the first time in decades that the pain of losing Daniel had found some kind of redemption. No. Thank you, he said. For giving me a second chance to be the family you always deserved. Outside, the city glowed. Somewhere down there, there were other young women like Imani had been. Lost, alone, convinced no one cared. But now they had the Grace Foundation. They had a voice. They had hope. And Imani was going to make sure none of them were forgotten like she almost was. If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel and leave in the comments. Do you believe it's never too late to find your family? Have you ever received a second chance that changed your life? Share your story. Because sometimes, what seems like the end is just the beginning of something extraordinary.